Architecture patterns, the 6 shapes a system can take. This is application architecture, and these are 6 names you have already met. Event-driven, layered, monolithic, microservices, MVC, primary and replica. People compare them as if they were a menu. They are not.
A team is probably sat in a design document. Somebody asks a fair question. Which architecture pattern should we use? 6 names go on the whiteboard. 2 hours later, nothing has been decided. Now listen to what people actually said. One person says, we should be event-driven. That is a statement about how the parts of a program call each other. Another says, no, microservices. That is a statement about how many pieces you build, deploy, and restart. A third says, but we already use MVC. That is a statement about how the files inside one program are arranged. Every one of those sentences is correct. The argument cannot end because everybody in the room assumed that only one of them could win. All 3 can be true at the same time. In most real systems, they are. So, let us do the subject properly. This video is about architecture patterns and about the 3 questions they answer. 3 things. First, what the word hides. One word, architecture, is used for 3 decisions that have nothing to do with each other. Second, the 3 levels themselves, the deploy unit, the code organization, and the data topology. Third, the 6 names sorted onto those levels, with what each one buys you and what each one costs. Now 3 things this is not. It is not solid. Solid is 5 rules for writing classes, and it is a much smaller subject. It is not the gang of 4 design patterns, which are smaller again. Those are about single objects, not about a system. And it is not a microservices tutorial. That is a subject of its own. Where does this bite? In the design document that nobody can agree on. In the interview question, describe your architecture, where a single name is a weak answer. And in the rewrite that changes one level and quietly breaks another. Here is the confusion I want to kill before anything else. The 6 names are not 6 options. Think about a house. On the left, a shop shelf with 6 finished houses standing on it, each with a price tag and a hand hovering above them. That is a menu. The only move you have is to point at one. So every question you ask gets the same answer. How many buildings is it? 1 of 6. How are the rooms laid out? 1 of 6. And the water supply? 1 of 6. That is useless, and you can feel that it is useless. Now look on the right. One single house, cut open from the roof down to the pipes. Ask the same 3 questions again. How many buildings? 1. How are the rooms laid out? Open plan. And the water supply? The mains and a tank. 3 separate answers from one building. How many buildings is one question. How the rooms are arranged is a second question. Where the water comes from is a third. The 6 names in this video are spread across 3 questions exactly like that. Before any of that, let me name the thing everything else in this video is about. There is one program. It is a small bookshop web service, and it really runs. Every number you are going to see came off it. Main.py creates the application and wires it together. Routes/books.py reads the request and writes the response. Services/catalog.py holds the discount rule and the stock rule. Repo/booksrepo.py is the only file in the whole program that opens a database connection. And events/bus.py is a tiny publish and subscribe bus with 1 worker thread. 12 files, 246 lines. FastAPI, 1 Jinja template, and the SQLite module that ships with Python. Nothing else. And when it runs, it is 1 process listening on 1 port. Hold that program in your head because I am about to describe it 6 different ways. Before the 6 names, 1 level below them is the word itself. Architecture is doing 3 jobs at the same time, and that is the whole problem. Here is the menu view, the one that fails. The 6 names go on the board in 1 row, as if they were 6 options. So the question becomes, which of the 6 is the right one for us? That question has no answer. Not a hard answer, no answer at all, because 3 of the words are not even about the same decision. It is like asking whether a house is 1 building or open plan. The sentence has a shape, but there is nothing in it to decide. Now the level view. First, sort each name onto the decision it is actually about. Now you are not choosing 1 of 6, you are answering 3 separate questions. And a real system answers all 3, with 1 name taken from each level. You ship a monolith that is layered inside, with MVC at the web edge and a primary and a replica underneath. That is 4 of the 6 names, in 1 program,
all true at the same time. So here is the mechanism, and there is no second half to it. 6 names, 3 levels, and every name lives on exactly one level. Level 1 is the deploy unit. The question it answers is, how many pieces do you deploy and restart? Monolithic means 1 unit. Microservices means many units. That is all that word decides. Level 2 is the code organization. The question is, inside 1 unit, how is the code split up, and how do the parts call each other? Layered lives here. Calls go one way, downwards. MBC lives here too. It splits the web edge into 3. And event-driven lives here as well. A part publishes a message instead of calling a function. Level 3 is the data topology. The question is, how many copies of the data are there, and which copy is allowed to accept a write? Primary and replica lives here. 1 writer plus read-only copies. Once they are sorted, the argument stops. Nobody asks whether a house is 1 building or has an open kitchen, because those 2 words answer different questions. So here is the claim, checked against the running program instead of argued about. I wrote a script that takes the 6 names one at a time and asks whether each one is true of this app. Monolithic? True. 1 deploy unit, 1 process, 1 port. Layered? True. 11 import edges between the modules and not one of them points upward. MVC? True. There is a controller, a view, and a model side, and they are separate. Event-driven? True. 1 bus, 2 subscribers, and they run in the same process ID as the request. Microservices? False, because there is only 1 unit here. And primary and replica? Not decided here, because there is 1 copy of the data and 1 writer. Now look at the count. 4 of the 6 names are true at the same moment, about the same program. They are not competing with each other. One honest note while it is on screen. The folders are called routes, services, and repo, not model, view, and controller. The 3 roles are separated, and the view really is a rendered template, so the label describes the structure, not the file names.
Level 1. Drawn. This is the same application, and it is the only picture in this video. A browser on the outside asks for 1 book. Inside, the routes file reads the request and writes the response. It calls the service file, which holds the discount rule and the stock rule. The service calls the repository file, which is the only file in the whole program that opens a database connection. And underneath that, 1 database file with 1 copy of the data. Now watch the dashed line. Everything inside it is 1 deploy unit, 1 process, 1 port, 1 thing to restart. So the first arrow from the browser crosses a network. The other 3 do not. They are ordinary function calls inside 1 process. Moving that dashed line is the entire deploy unit level. Draw it around everything and you have a monolith. Draw it around each box and you have microservices. Nothing else in the picture changes. The boxes stay, the arrows stay, the code inside them stay. Only what those arrows cost changes, and it changes a lot.
So what does moving that dashed line actually cost? I measured it 3,000 times each way. Calling the service as a plain function inside the process takes about 1/10 of a millisecond. Reaching exactly the same function over HTTP on this same machine with the connection already open takes 1.67 milliseconds. That is about 15 times more for the same code doing the same work. And remember what that measurement is: loopback on 1 laptop with no real network in it at all. The extra 1.5 milliseconds is pure boundary, HTTP framing, JSON encoded on the way out and decoded on the way back in, and a trip through the kernel. If I strip the database out, the business rule itself takes 1/3 of a microsecond. So on a real network, this only gets worse. That is the bill for independent deploys, and it arrives on every single call. Level 2, and here is the first name on it, layered. This one is not a matter of opinion, which is what I like about it. Layered means the imports only ever point one way. Routes may import services, services may import the repository may not import services, and nothing below may import routes. That is the whole rule. And because it is a rule about imports, you can check it with a program. So I wrote that checker. It is 80 lines of Python, 66 of them actual code. It reads every module with the AST module, gives each one a rank, and fails on any import that points upward. On the clean app, it prints pass, 11 import edges inside the app, none of them upward. Then I put 1 upward import into the service layer, 1 line, from app.routes import books. Run the checker again and it prints the violation, names the file and the line number, and exits with 1. So what does layered buy you? You can read the program in one direction. What does it cost you? Every call pays for the whole stack, even when the route only wants 1 row back. Second name on the same level, MVC, Model View Controller. It is smaller than layered because it is about the web edge, not about the whole program. Here, the controller is getBook. It reads the book ID, asks the model side for a view of that book, and returns it. 5 lines, and it decides nothing. The view is the HTML template. The model side is catalog.py. Now here is the cost, and I measured it rather than asserting it. I wrote the same endpoint FAT, the SQL and the pricing rule inlined straight into the route function. 21 lines instead of 5, and now the route opens the database itself. Watch what that does. I traced both versions with the interpreter. A unit test of the pricing rule runs 17 lines of catalog.py and 0 lines of the FAT route. The rule is still there. You just cannot reach it anymore without going through HTTP, and that test costs 12 times as much to run. So controllers get fat is not a style complaint. It is a bill you pay in your test suite.
Third name on level 2, and this is the one people file in the wrong place, event-driven. It is about how a part is reached, not about how many machines you own. Look at the order endpoint. It does not call the audit code, and it does not call the receipt code. It publishes a message called order placed, and then it returns. Somewhere else, at startup, 2 parts said they cared about that message and subscribed to it. That is the whole pattern. Now the measurement, because this is the load-bearing part. I printed the process ID in the request handler and in both subscribers. All 3 printed the same number. I counted the network connections before publishing and after publishing. 1 listening socket, both times. New connections created by the event, 0. Broker processes running, 0. No broker, no socket, no second machine. The publisher does not know who is listening, and that is the whole upside. You add a 3rd subscriber without touching the route at all. And here is what that upside costs, measured on the same app. I made the same failure happen 2 ways. First, down a direct call. The traceback is 4 frames long, and the request handler is in it. The request returns HTTP 500, so the caller finds out straight away. You read the cause off 1 stack trace. What you pay for that is that the 2 parts are now welded to each other. Second, through the bus. The traceback is 3 frames long, and the request handler is not in it. That is the load-bearing sentence. The request had already returned HTTP 200 in 3.3 milliseconds before the subscriber even started. The deepest frame in that traceback is bus.py on a thread called busworker. There is nothing in it that links back to the request that caused it, unless you put that link into the payload yourself. So loose coupling and a broken trace are not 2 separate facts. They are the same fact seen from 2 sides. And it is the same price whether the subscriber sits in your process or on another machine.
Level 3. And this video is only going to say what it decides. Primary and replica is not an alternative to a monolith. It is not even in the same conversation. It answers a different question. The question at this level is, how many copies of the data are there, and which copy is allowed to accept a write? 1 copy is a perfectly good answer, and it is the answer this app gives. 1 primary that takes all the writes, plus replicas that only serve reads, is another answer. What you buy with it is read capacity. What you pay for it is replication lag. A read from a replica can be slightly behind the write that just happened. And here is why it belongs on its own level. You can change that answer without touching a line of the code above it, because of how the code is organized.
So what do you actually do with all this? Stop asking which pattern is best. Ask which level you are deciding on. Before you compare 2 names, check whether they even answer the same question. Most arguments about architecture end right there, in about 10 seconds. Then answer the 3 questions in order. How many units do we ship and restart? How is the code inside one unit arranged, and how do the parts call each other? And how many copies of the data are there, and who may write to them? You will end up with 3 names, not 1. That is not indecision. That is what a real system looks like, and it is a much stronger answer than a single word. If this comes up in an interview, here are 3 questions and what a good answer sounds like. Is a monolith worse than microservices? Neither is worse. They answered the deploy unit question, and only that one. 1 unit means 1 deploy and 1 failure domain. Many units mean independent deploys and a network in between them. Neither of those says anything about how your code is arranged. Second question, can you be event-driven without microservices? Yes, event-driven is a code-level choice. A bus can publish to subscribers inside one process, with no broker and no network, in the same process ID. The cost is the same either way. The request trace breaks. Third question, and it is the one you will actually get. What is your architecture? Give 3 answers, not one name. The deploy unit, then the code, then the data, and name the price you accepted at each level. That is what the interviewer is listening for.
One word, architecture, is doing 3 jobs. It names the deploy unit, the code organization, and the data topology, all at once. So before you argue, sort, then compare. 2 names that sit on different levels are not alternatives, and comparing them is a category mistake, which is why 4 of the 6 names can be true at once. One program, measured, monolithic, layered, MVC, and event-driven at the same moment. And each of those names has a bill attached. Independent deploys buy you a network hop on every single call. Loose coupling buys you a broken trace. Read capacity buys you replication lag. So the question you ask is not which pattern is best. It is which level am I on? There is no best because there is no single question. That is architecture patterns. 6 names, 3 levels, and no menu. If that sorted something out for you, hit like and subscribe so the next one finds you. Thanks for watching.